Good morning, everyone. As Lori said, my name is Ryan Gibson. I'm a faculty member at the University of Guelph, but this morning I'm joining you from the Canadian Arctic on the traditional territory of the Kwalin First Nation. And it's a great honor this morning to be able to introduce our speaker, Margarita Fontecha. Margarita is a doctoral candidate in rural studies at the University of Guelph, and her research explores the link between food security and peace building in the dynamic context of the cocoa producing areas of Colombia, and particularly among youth. By working towards food security and environmental sustainability, Margarita's belief is that we can start to bridge the inequities that are present in small communities in rural Colombia. I've always been intrigued by a wonderful quote that I saw from Margarita a few years back, that her philosophy is that knowledge is not just for one small group, but rather needs to be for everybody. And so in our work, whether academic or community development practice, we must be striving towards these opportunities for transferring and to communicate knowledge so that we can find ways to collaborate. So I think we're going to have a really interesting, we're going to get to hear an interesting topic, a piece of research, but also a wonderful opportunity for discussion. But with that, I'm going to turn the proverbial floor over to Margarita to share her research. Welcome.
Well, thank you, everybody. This is really exciting. Thank you to the International Association for Community Development and Professor Ryan Gibson for the invitation to share a little bit of my research. And thank you, everybody who joined today to listen to this presentation I have prepared. I hope you enjoy it. First of all, I would like to share my screen, so just let me know if you can see it. So, um, sorry, as Professor Ryan already said, my name is Margarita Fontecha. I'm a PhD candidate in the Rural Studies program at the University of Guelph, and I'm a Bania scholar. My supervisor is and Professor Silvia Sarcura, and together we have been exploring the different roles and the critical role, I guess, that rural youth have in developing countries like Colombia, which I am from. And I guess before jumping into the topic, I would like to share why I decided to focus on rural youth and what is part of this doctoral research journey. So I work in international cooperation for at least 10 years in Colombia. And one of the things that shocked me was like why for some rural youth that live in very remote areas, they have all the conditions to change their aspirations and life courses, but why for some others was like impossible. It's like they were born there in these rural areas in Colombia, and they will have to stay there and repeat the cycles. So I kept asking myself, like, what's the difference between one and the other? And I guess my curiosity took me to do a PhD, and I'm trying to understand this reality. And as Professor Ryan was saying a little bit before, at the end of the day, is trying to gather data and information so I can support decision making processes and provide it to my country and to the rural youth that was part of my field research, like giving them more opportunities to facilitate different conversations and dialogues with the adults that they have around them. So this is just a case study from, again, Colombia, from a rural area, and I will focus on one of the tools that I developed for my research, which is the Photo Voice project. And I will start with this quote from one of the students that participate in one of the Photo Voice groups that I conducted last year. It is like they want us to stay here. There is no support to study engineer, law, medicine. It is plantains, papayas, cows, trees, or coca. Coca as in the illegal crop. So it says a lot about where, like the territories where they live. And this feeling that they will have to stay in this place just because they were born there. So why it's important to facilitate the visibility of rural youth in research and the development agenda? So there is a huge gap in terms of a huge gap in the development agenda, like sustainable development agenda and the research agenda. In terms of when we talk about rural youth, usually it is framed only as a economic supply, economic input, like labor. And I understand that the world right now needs to secure a skilled and sustainable labor force to keep producing the food for a population that keeps growing and growing. However, when we only portray rural youth as farmers or potential farmers, we are just being very narrow in terms of like their life courses and what do they want, what are their dreams and what are their aspirations. The other gap that we found is, and when I say we, is I talk my supervisor and I, just to make that clear. What we found is that rural youth studies focus in the global north and the sub-Saharan region. There are few research and projects right now that work with rural youth in areas like Latin America. And there is an urgent need for research on rural youth that involves conflict and illegal economies as part of the influencers for life courses trajectories. And these two elements, the conflict and the illegal economies, are really important in a context like Colombia, which has had an ongoing civil conflict since 1988. We have had like different peace processes, but it's just like very dynamic. So sometimes we will have conflict, but then it will go back, ups and downs. And illegal economies because we have coca production, illegal mining, illegal logging. And most of these illegal economies happen in rural areas. So what did we do? For my supervisor and I, it was really important to engage rural youth, but not only like as validators of information, but also as how can we ensure that they have an active role in our research. And we start to look for this, and I know I have many conversations with Brian about what was the best way to engage students and youth in these kind of studies. And photo voice start to appear in different search and in different experiences. So I was like, well, maybe this could be a way that students and rural youth have the opportunity to show their reality and their territory through photography, right? Our study was conducted in La India, which is a rural municipality in Santander, Colombia. And you can see this very small, tiny point. That's where La India is. 49% of the people in Landazuri live in poverty conditions. And of those 49, 18 live in extreme poverty. As I was saying before, there is illicit and legal economic activities that coexist in the same field. And in this particular case, we had agriculture, coca production, illegal logging, and mining. So what I had the opportunity to observe was that families will go to the farm from in the mornings, and then in the afternoon they will just like go and work in the coca crop. Some parents will just leave their kids to go and work in the illegal logging industry for a couple of months to get some income. And there are no like strict lines between what is legal and what not. At the end, it's very blurred. And families are just like, how can I get more income? How can I produce more income for my family? Also, 60% of the students drop out of school between 13 and 16 years old. And as I was saying before, there is an evolving civil conflict since 1970. And there is a strong presence of illegal actors controlling access to natural resources. But telling you all this and showing that image, it doesn't say that much, right? So I wanted to share this map that was drew by some of the students in the Photo Voice project. And I think it's more accurate and it says a little bit more about the village. So what you can see here is the river. This is the Carabre River. And these are two crocodiles and gators that they have there. Here are some crops. And you can see there are two playgrounds or soccer fields. What it's interesting to see is like this one has likes, and most of the students will refer to this one. They like to hang out there because there is like. So when they have like soccer games at night, of course they are gonna play there instead of the other one where it's kind of sketchy. You can see the bar, really important for teenagers. This is the school and some houses that I drew. So going a little bit more deep and into the methodology and what we did, our Photo Voice project was framed under the participatory action research. We position ourselves as facilitators. We were just like trying to understand what were all these characteristics that influence rural youth decision-making process about their aspirations and life courses in a context like this one. And we conducted our research in alliance with the village school. And there are two reasons why we did it this way. One, it was because of security concerns, and the other one, because the school, this very local school, gathers at least 75, 80% of the teenagers and kids in the village. So we had 36 students that signed up for the Photo Boost project, and we divided the 36 students in four groups. And we have each group had 8 workshops that included training about how to use a camera, like how to take photos, very simple things. They have like manuals. We also have hikes. We will just go around trying to take photos of the topics of the week. And we will come back to the classroom at school to talk about the photos they took. And these photos, they will choose 1 photo, 2 photos, and they will share why they like it, why they didn't like it, what the photos represent for them. And that's where the magic happened because it triggered many conversations where their peers, other students will like interact and ask questions. And that was really, really special. And also, we had additional activities like the community mapping exercises that I already showed. We also have like a workshop for Muppets elaboration, just to give them like an opportunity or different tools to engage in the discussions about what do your parents do here in the village? What are the activities that people do here? And the workshops, each of these workshops was frame under 4 topics that, based on the research and the goals, we wanted to go deeper. One is the territory, the professions in the community, the places where rural youth is in the community, and the concept of opportunity. And here are some other photos from the experience that we had. So here this one in the top, this is a group of students, during one of the workshops taking photos. Um, Thanks to a small grant from the Arrowfoot Food Institute at the University of Guelph, each student had their own digital camera, so they didn't have to share. So we were like worrying about logistics and all that. But this way was really nice. Each kid had their camera, and we were around taking the photos. Here are some of the Muppets they did to represent what people do in their community. So you can see an agriculture, the cattle rancher, a fisher. This one is a person that works collecting emeralds in the river. This is another agriculture. And this one here is very funny because it represents the mom of one of the students. So when I asked him like what does your mom do and why this Muppet, he would say like, oh my mom plays bingo. So that's what she do every day. So that's why he did it. And here at the bottom are some of the photos, the photo exposition. So that's important because once the Photo Voice project ended, for many students was really important to keep like going, keep the conversation. So they organized themselves, and the principal of the school and I, we were just like facilitating, and they organized a photo exhibition. So the kids chose 1 photo that they had taken during the project. We printed and we took this photo exhibition first to other rural schools. You can see here. We also took it to the Central Park in the municipality, and you can see here. You can see here Neisa. Neisa was one of the students, and she's really proud of her photo, and she was showing to her nephews and her sister what she did. And in this photo is also really special because when we took the photo exposition to La India, to the village, most of the community came. It was like the thing that day. And for this young man that you can see here, he was really excited that he was part of the photo exposition, and he was like taking a photo with the photo that one of the students took of him. So you can see it here. And I think for me, as a researcher, what was important in this case, like the photo exposition and take it to different places, was the different conversations that start to happen between adults and teenagers. So the students will be presenting the photo exposition. It was them. I would just help them to organize the things, but it was the group of them, like several of them, just like sharing what did they do, what was the photo voice project about, uh, and many people will come and ask questions, and it was them, the people who will respond all the questions about their territory. So that was pretty special. And what are the results that we obtain from our photo voice project? And I want to say this again. This is just like one of the tools that we implemented. We implemented other tools and we did other different activities. So these results are the ones that we got from the photo voice project. So what we have identified is there are three levels of influence and different topics that come up or emerge from this tool. At a very niche individual level, what we saw is that it's important the developing of agency, the perceived level of available opportunities, and the confidence to achieve them. The youth and children situation, which means more like education, health, access to healthcare, places to play, and youth participation. The 36 students that participate in the project, they will argue that they feel they were not like recognized in their community and they will never participate in any sort of decision or thing. At a regime level, which is more like the municipality level, community level, the education and economic opportunities will have a huge influence on the developing of aspirations and life courses. And at a big structural institutional level, what we found is that who controls the natural resources, which from a very neoliberal model, plus having conflict and the exercise of violence, like illegal groups in the community, that actually has a lot of to say in what the rural youth think they can do or they will be in the future as an adults. So, for example, access to land, access to water, who control the coca production, who control the the business of the illegal logging. That's going to be very important. And for most of these youth, they will be like trying to find alternatives to join these legal or illegal economic activities, I guess. We also found that education at the school in La India focuses on food production and it limits other disciplines. And this is really interesting because for the school, what when I had some conversations with the principal and the teachers, they will be like, we know that our students will most likely work in farms. So we just want them to have enough skills, enough capacities, so they can have like sustainable farms and produce as much food and they can provide for their families. But on the other side, and from the student side, they felt like this is it, like our school, our families, like the whole ecosystem wants us just to be farmers. But what if I don't want it to be? What if I want to just be a different person or do something different? So going back to the quote I brought at the beginning of the presentation, you can see that there is a lot of frustration and there is like this feeling of being hopeless, like, oh, this is it, I'm just going to be a farmer and I'll just keep doing what my parents, what my grandparents did. Also, there are no incentives for youth to explore or find alternative life courses outside the village. We map like potential scholarships. There are non scholarships if you want to study law and you come from rural areas. There are no credit lines targeting rural youth. So if you want to be a farmer, but you want to be like a sustainable farmer or have like more technical farm, there are not many options. And these temporary legal and illegal jobs keep grabbing kids from school and the community and putting them in these activities. And of course, when you are 15, 16, and your household is poor, you want to get cash because you want to get the cell phone, you want to get the motorcycle. And also, and I think this is important, many of these students that participate, well, many no, 25% of the students that participate in the study, they live by themselves. They don't live with their parents or any other grown up. So they have to work and study at the same time. And this is connected with the next one, which is families in La India tend to be part of households where the parents are absent for many reasons. And most of the kids are cared by third parties. Um, and going back to the literature will say that to have sustainable life trajectories or to aim for sustainable life courses, you need to have at least one adult that cares for you, right? That asks you, how are you? How are things going? And it doesn't have to be your parents. It could be a teacher. It could be a different adult. But the adult figure, when you are elaborating, no, like creating your own aspirations and life courses is going to be really important. And the last is there are negative role models in India who are involved in violence and illegal businesses. And there are no empowering or positive people stories who could have overcome contextual situations to access more positive life courses. In many of the focus groups and discussions that I have with the students, they will feel like there is no one uh, similar to them. And when I say similar to them, is from the village that they can relate, like, oh, this person did it. This person actually left the village and had a life, had a different perspective for a different life courses. So for them was like, what's the point to try if we're not gonna be able to make it? These are some general, very general conclusions, and again, preliminary things that we have come up from our Photo Voice project. So the first is that the structures and institutions prevent youth from exercising their agency, which is critical for them at this very individual level. And when I say structures and institutions, it sounds very like theory and all that, but it's more like who who and what spaces are in place so rural youth can participate in decisions that will affect them. That's really important. Also, when I think about structures and institutions, is there is a lack of governance in the territory. In this village, there is no like presence of the government, of the municipal government or national government. It is more about school and the legal groups who will control who access, how decisions are made. Um, and because of these negative roles and this feel of hopelessness, I feel what we observe is like there is this vicious cycle that keeps repeating. Like there are no many change. It's very similar, the story of the grandparents, the parents, and the kids. However, and this is really important in going back to why I decided to do all this research and work with rural youth is trying to find like where are the points or where we can do like certain change in the systems so we have a different outcome. So one is to provide students and rural youth access to new information and resources. So for example, in terms of just only focusing on food production and being a farmer, students could have access to other kind of careers and opportunities. The other thing is ensuring participation training and spaces to participate, not even at the community level. Let's start with the school level. So at the school, they don't even have like the opportunity to participate or have like voting processes for the student representative or student council. They don't have that. But I guess if you start to trigger certain conversations and processes and the school, it might have a reflection on the community and improving youth and children's basic conditions in the village. Again, this is related to education, healthcare access, where who takes care of these kids when their parents leave to work in the logging industry for 2 3 months. And the fourth conclusion is more a call to action about we need to start thinking about rural youth not only in terms of their economic contribution, but also in terms of their well-being. And this is going to sound very, well, it's going to sound, no, it is from a Marxian. It's like we need to ensure that rural youth have the freedom to decide what do they want to do when they are grown-ups. It's not like only very deterministic that, oh, because you were born in this rural area, therefore you are going to be a farmer, and therefore you are going to keep continuing this cycle. So we need to start to think a little bit outside that box that we have created in the last decades. And before I wrap up my presentation, again, the Photo Voice project is just a little part, but for me as a person, not as a researcher only, as a person, it is the heart of my research. It was where I can found the most beautiful stories and had the opportunity and privilege to work with 36 students, young men and women. And my studies and research is supported by the School of Environmental Design and Rural Studies at the University of Guelph, the Social Science and Humanities Research Council here in Canada, and the Arrowfoot Food Institute in the University of Guelph. Thank you very much. Please feel free to contact me or my supervisor to provide for feedback if you have any question. If you have any idea, right now I'm in the process of writing my thesis, analyzing data and writing my thesis. So any question, any idea, it's always very nice because it keeps you reflecting and thinking about the data. So thank you very much. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's give a nice round of applause to Margarita there. That was an excellent presentation of a very
Thank you.
exciting and inspiring piece of work that belongs in your PhD. So we are taking part in this at a crucial time for you, just when you're writing it up. So I invite people who are here for any comments or questions. So if you would like to make a comment or question, you can just physically raise your hand as long as you wave it around and you've got your screen on, or otherwise you can use the Zoom hand to raise. And if for any reason you can't get the mic on, you can put it in the chat. So who's got any comments or questions so far?
In the meantime, I'm just going to share a link with all the photos and some interviews and videos that the students prepare. So you can visit this website and see the whole project.
Thank you. And we've got a waving of the hand from Martin, I think. Is that a hand wave? Yes, go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Margarita. That was really interesting. The kind of issues you identify resonate very much with the kind of issues of rural dwelling young people in Scotland, where I'm based. I think some of the contextual stuff will be different in terms of the conflict in the background, perhaps has less of an influence, but expectations, opportunities, lack of agency, lack of effort on the part of agencies to engage young people in discussions is a common theme. So just very interesting to hear what a different contextual setting had to say on it.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Martin. It is interesting, isn't it? Rural may be different around the world in terms of big or large sizes of population, but being rural usually means marginalized, doesn't it, in many different ways.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment there.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Laurie.
Go ahead, and then we'll take Laurie.
One of the things that shocked my mind doing a literature review for my research is that there are many countries in the world, not only Colombia, that face conflict and illegal economies, right? Many countries in the developing world will be very similar. However, there are very few articles or like research, like peer-reviewed research that takes into account conflict and illegal economies and the whole rural youth thing. So that was very shocking. That's it. I just wanted to say that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Laurie.
That I was shocked about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I was curious, a couple of things. One, if Paulo Freire and consensitization came up in your lit review or your work. Sort of linked to that, I'm curious whether you were able to note or observe a sense of increased sense of agency among the youth, maybe because of their participation in the Photo Voice project or other parts of the research that you were doing.
It's a very interesting question. I guess agency is like a muscle. You have to exercise it. That's what I think about it. The Photo Voice project, I don't know if increase or not their agency and their decision-making processes, but what I can say is that when they came to me to say, we want to do a photo exposition, it was their idea. Like they organized 36 students. They organized us and they say, we don't want this to be over. We wanted to show our parents and our teachers that look what we did, right? So I feel that's like they were exercising their agency. I would say that. I don't know if the project itself actually strengthened their agency, but I can see certain attitudes and behaviors that you can argue that they were trying to say that this is my voice and this is what I want to do. But I don't know if I answered the question.
Okay, Kira, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks very much for a wonderful presentation. Really interesting. So many different themes. I've many questions, but just related to Larry's question, I was also wondering about the relationship between you as the researcher and the young people, and how did you develop the relationship? What were the different ways in which they were involved in the project? I'd just love to hear a little bit more about that. I think it's really interesting that they had the idea to do the exhibition. And I think it suggests that they did feel autonomy and within their participation, but I'd love to hear more about how you set it up and develop that relationship overall. Thank you.
I love the question, and Ryan is laughing because he knows that it took me a long time of my research, like the field time. It was not about doing research. It was about building a relationship with them. So it took me like at least 3 to 4 months until I was able to carry on the Photo Voice project and I start doing research. I went to Colombia in December 2022. And first I talked with the principal of the school and the teachers. I presented my research to them and to some parents in the village. And because of course that was like the first layer. Like this is who I am, this is my research, this is the goal. And there two things happened. One, they had to agree that they wanted to be part of the school wanted to be part of the research, and they got to see like it was important for them too. But also they recommended to spend time with the kids just so they were familiar to who I was, because I'm very different. Like even if I'm a Colombian, I'm super different from them, their context, and even physically we are very different. So they were like, why don't you just come every day and help us with, I don't know, the school assembly, participate in the sports tournament. And they will start to see like, oh, this is not just an outsider and a stranger, but this person is like kind of nice. So I will do that. I will participate in the school tournaments and the different activities the school have. Also, and I think it's important to mention this principal of my research, the principal of the school, he had a meeting with the people who controls the illegal activities in the village, because they have to authorize that I was going to be there. And during the time I was there, the kids were asked many times, like, what were the workshops about? They will be asking the kids about what do we talk, we were using cameras for. So that was part of the day. But once I spent at least 4 months with the school and just being around and people get to know me, it's a very small village. So you get to know everyone in a couple of days and all that. And you just go to different houses, have lunch, all that. That's when it was appropriate to say like, okay, let's start to do a photo voice project. So when I presented the photo voice project to different groups of kids in the school, they were really interesting. I was expecting only to work with 14 of them, but then we have 36. And I didn't want to, that was my decision as research. I didn't want to leave anyone behind. So that's why we created 4 groups. And it took more time. And of course, it was a decision with my supervisor about the time, the resources I had, how I was going to manage all this. But we were able to have 36 students. And I feel one of the challenges was to build that confidence and that trust with the students and the community itself. Thanks to that, the trust that I built with the teachers, the families, and the students, I felt protected doing my research in the village because they will take care of me. They will be like, today you cannot come to the village. Because whatever, I never asked why, but I knew that there were happening many things. But it was the community who would be responding to these illegal groups and illegal people in the community. And they knew when it was safe and they knew when I can do all the workshops. At the end of my field research and my time in the village, I knew everyone and everyone, I felt like welcome, and I like the kids were happy every time we met. So that was very, very special. Sometimes, and I will just finish with this, it would be hard to separate myself as person and the research role. Sometimes that's very challenging because you develop this relationship with the kids and they start to tell you more about their personal and family stories. And I feel I was not ready for that. Like you start to get personal and I have to keep reminding like what was my role. Like, yes, of course I was gonna care about them and their families and stories, but my time in the village was very limited. I still talk with the teachers and some of the students, but we all knew what was I doing in the village and what was like the time and why things were setting in this very kind of particular way. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can see we'll take Jim first and then Feroze. So Jim, over to you.
Yes, thanks very much. Again, a very, very interesting, and a colleague in the northeast of England here who's involved very much with marginalized young people is very, very critical of the attitudes of the teachers and the background of the teachers. You know, where does that attitude they have towards these young people come from? How do they merge that with any training that they've had? So, any comment about the attitude of the teachers to the young people?
Yes, many. So I feel, well, many of the teachers will be also part of the community. They are parents in the community and they are there. So they have like these many different roles and ideas. I feel most of them wanted to try and give a student the opportunity to develop their skills. So they will try to have a sports tournament. They will try to do like other kind of activities, not only like food production related, but for some others, it was like, this is it. They are going to be farmers. Why would you care about doing an arts project or arts program in our school if they're not going to do that? You know, I felt for some of them, it was like they were not even trying and classes were just uh, like they were not trying to engage a student. It was very like, I'm the teacher. This is what you got to learn for the test. And that's it. Others is at least they try, but yeah, it was not like something you can see. What I would say is like there is at least 2 or 3 teachers that they just adopted the mission to not let the illegal economies to take the kids. So they will go to their houses, to their families, like, you gotta study. If you study, you will have a better future, you know, like trying to worry about these students in order to not let the bad guys to take them out of school, like a personal mission for them. But that's just like the extraordinary. The ordinary is more like, I'm your teacher, this is it. This is the classroom, and here's our relationship ended. Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
Rosie, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I am Margarita's colleague. You work under the same professor, so I am familiar with Margarita's fascinating research, and we have had many conversations. I have a comment and one question. So, Margarita, you mentioned that you were shocked seeing there isn't a lot of literature that connects conflict and development. So I find it's not, this is my observation. And you also mentioned about Amartya Sen's capabilities approach. And Laurie also mentioned about Freire's conscientization in the process of work. I had one personal experience at University of Guelph as a guest lecturer where I presented that how colonization used food as a weapon to control the colonized people. So I'm from Bangladesh, and we know very well that how food can be weaponized. So when I mentioned in the class that in 200 years of British colonial history in South Asia, 65 million people died. So I found that students are very struggling to accept the fact that how in 200 years, 65 million people, like, yeah, how do you come to terms with that? So the comment is that in terms of research, it's neoliberal research. It's very important that which kind of research gets funded. So the kind of conversation that you're talking about capabilities approach, about conscientization, so that's the other thing. But my own research is about trust. And you talked about building trust. And my research is in Canada, that we know that the Canadian government universities are not trustworthy, at least if the history, how we have treated with the Indigenous people. There's a difference between trust and being trustworthy. So trusting wisely is important. So when you go to a community, my question to you is that, when you understand they have had a very violent history, there are so many things that are impacting them, right? And we are stepping into it. You just have mentioned that you are not ready for a lot of personal stories that you are facing, right? Is it necessary for us to, in the Western model of research, to separate the researcher from the research and to reach the proverbial scientific or research objectivity?
Yes, Laurie.
Yeah, I was just saying, very interesting, those comments, and I really appreciate them, because I had put a comment in the chat after the earlier conversation that I asked about agency, and in evaluation of community programs, you know, to get funding and from foundations and government and so on, you know, it's usually weak, but a part of evaluation, especially developmental evaluation, is to also capture impacts that you weren't expecting. And I think this is really important, especially just to take your project, Margarita, and connect it to a higher level of discussion within the IACD. Recently, as we were developing a new strategic plan, there was a lot of conversation about the term empowerment. And there was an article, Ryan, you shared it with me. I don't know how to pronounce the guy's last name. It was a big, long name with B in front of it. But I shared the article, and it was really about, I think it was agency and solidarity, were two of the key terms, and it was theorizing community development, I think was the title of the article. And Sarah, maybe you recognized it too, or Anna did, or someone. And so it's very important to have these conversations, I think, where we hear what's going on the ground and what researchers are working on in community development related fields. And then also have this connection with theory or a discussion at the higher level, or, you know, and have one informing the other and the other informing this one, so that we stay current about this practice of community development, and how it's connected to evolving ideas in theory. My background happens to be in adult education. Educational studies is my PhD that I'm working on. But so that's why I mentioned Prairie. But yeah, and then and this is going to sound a little whacked, but I'm in a community of researchers, so I'm going to mention it anyway. Another field that I'm thinking about a lot and looking at a lot at is post-humanism, by Rosie Braidotti. So the idea of decentering the human, the idea of recognizing years of conflict and colonization and the harm that that's done. You know, to me, it's a very exciting area of theory. It also, she talks about affirmative ethics and the idea of global ethics and what that should be. And there's actually a book that was published in 2023 called Global Ethics that she wrote a chapter for, that I was like, oh my God, this is, you know, catnip to me. It was just like, yes, this is the chapter I was looking for. So I just wanted to mention those as this idea of trying. I think this forum, the Researchers Forum, is a really important place to connect active, practical research, community-based research in the field related to community development, and different emerging areas of theory that could be relevant to community development, and then being able to have a conversation about those two things and connecting those two things.
Okay, Ferozi, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. Just quickly to Laurie about post-humanism and Braidotti's work. Yes, you know, her work is very inspiring. I also have found very helpful is the red pedagogy, the indigenous epistemology. So in one word, what I find fascinating, whether it is doing research, like for example, a lot of indigenous scholars will say research as resistance, research as a ceremony to understand that. And fundamentally, if we know anything about developmental research or scientific research, or research was one of the main tools for imperial cartography. Knowledge production was a tool to justify colonial cruelty all over the world, right? Starting from even Darwin. So anyway, social Darwinism, we know it all. I think one key difference about Western research and indigenous research is this. Western research claims rationality, objectivity, but in opposed to that, the indigenous epistemology, they look at everything relationally, that you can only know things in relation. So my relationship with animals and plants, we are in this together. So if the plants die, if the animals die, so do I. So I think this very Eurocentric hubris or the epistemic hegemony that we are the one who can think objectively and rationally to understand what is happening has done a lot of damage. So this is what I just wanted to add to that. I find relational epistemology, conscientization, knowledge from the global South, that is being born out of a struggle, out of lived experiences, not some sort of Platonic, you know, view of the world, the Archimedean point that we know what's going on, right? So yeah, I find it helpful, inspiring. Thank you.
I just wanted to add two things and to answer Firaz's question before. the paper that you were referencing, and I can't pronounce this, about solidarity and agency. I'm sorry. I read a lot about her, and it was through Ryan that I discovered this scholar. And I feel solidarity is one of the most important things, and I could actually see it in practice in this community. They have survived like horrible times of in terms of conflict, and it's because they have this very strong community level, and it's full of solidarity. So when, for example, one of the fathers or moms were killed because of the conflicts and all the because of the violence that happened in the village in the 90s and early 2000s, it would be the teachers, it will be the extended family that will take care of the kids and the children. So I feel that solidarity in this community specifically has helped them to build strong relationships and trust, that they can be resilient. If I don't know, I'm not sure that's the word, but be resilient to the conflict and the different dynamics that it brings every now and then. And going back to the question about the different research, like the research role and my personal role, I don't think you can. I don't think you can make that distinction. Like, you are just one person. You just wear different hats, but you are just one person. I'm just one Margarita. And it was, I guess what I was trying to say is like, I wish I had had the conversation before going to the field about all these personal stuff that you start to feel. And the stories you start to connect with the kids, with their families, with the history. So I kept reminding myself, like, I am here because I'm doing this research, because this is my goal, but it's impossible to, or at least for me, it was impossible to separate who I am and the feelings and emotions I had while I was doing the work. I don't think there is no, as you were saying, these neutral objectivity is really, I don't think it exists. It doesn't exist, at least that's what I feel. You bring to the research all your context or your emotions, all your background and identities, and let's talk about intersectionality and all that. You bring all that to how you're presenting your data. What are you writing from? What are your conclusions? So I don't think you can divide the person in two. That's my answer to that.
Okay, some quite challenging questions here. Perhaps I could take the opportunity, excuse me, to ask you a little bit more. As the young people were gaining more confidence, power, the conscientization process goes on. I'm not sure whether they've done the exhibition yet or not. Were you finding some resistance from people in the community who were invested in having these young people stay here? Obviously, there were negative role models, lack of positive ones. Were there also sort of actively blockages that people were making to your research because they were seeing that it was giving the young people possibilities to think outside the box, to think there could be something different in their lives?
Yes. So of course, the people who control the natural resources and illegal businesses, they were the first adults that will resist this kind of projects. And one of the students one time told me, like, I like to come to your workshop, not because of the photographies, but we have the opportunity to talk. And that was like, wow. So again, when we talk about participation and agency, we don't have to think, and that's like one of the lessons I learned. We don't have to think like only decision makers in the adult world, like starting in their school, just having like a student board or student council. Sorry, I just go back there. Going back to the adults that refuse to some kind of the project. Yes, one is the legal people. Some of the teachers that they are just like, as Jim was asking, or we were having this discussion about the resistance. For some teachers, it was like, oh, here it is, more work, new things, it doesn't work. We have tried everything, just leave it that way. So that's a lot of resistance too, trying to prove that these kind of approaches will be beneficial for the community. And but that was it. And I feel at the end of the when we were doing like the second group, all the community knew what we were doing. So the first group that we did the photo booth project, the first 8 workshops, everybody was like, what are they doing and what do they have cameras and are taking pictures here? So that was scary. But then by the second, third, fourth projects and groups, people will come and will be like, oh, take me a picture. Oh, I want to show you my little store. So they were more engaged. And I love that because it allowed the kids, not me, but the kids, to have discussions with the adults, you know, in terms of like the port. For example, one person was telling us like, when did they build the port in the river? And he was just like telling them stories. And while he was telling them stories, they were like taking pictures of the port and the boats. And it was like this sharing that they don't usually have. So it was like the Photo Voice project was amazing because it triggered many conversations that it was not just me as a researcher and getting data. It was more about the community and the people who participate in that project. And finally, when we brought the presentation back to La India, the photo exhibition, all the community went, all the parents came, the teachers, and they were like super proud of doing that. So that was very special for them to see the territory from the eyes of rural youth. That was really cool. And just very basic questions like, why did you take the photo of these flowers? So the girl will say like, oh, because when I was growing old, this is the flowers that my mom used to plant in our garden. You know, that was very cool. At least for me. Yeah. You know, having all this conversation, that was really interesting to see. And the good thing, and I will go back to this, is like the community enjoy so much the project and the kids did too, that the illegal people will never bother us more than, you know, like once or 2 times. They will be like, no, you cannot walk today, you cannot do a hike with the kids today. But other than that, I felt that the community just like embrace the project and protect it a lot.
Thank you. Is there anybody who hasn't made any comments or reflections so far who'd like to? And we've got people from all sorts of different parts of the world, including parts of Africa. So any further comments that people would like to make or questions? I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer. There's so many issues that are starting to come out now. You're telling us more about the details of this research, and I think it's so good to hear these stories of participatory research, because it can be so powerful if it's done slowly, carefully, respectfully, and well. It can really have an impact, can't it? Including many of the unforeseen impacts. Sometimes they can be negative as well as positive, but the kind of positive role that your presence there as a kind of insider in that you're from that country, but an outsider in that you're now different and you're in Canada and you're coming in and stimulating, facilitating, developing trust and enabling people to find new ways of thinking and being. So I think it's a brilliant project. And thank you very, very much for sharing it with us. And I think we all wish you luck in your writing up, and we look forward perhaps to reading. You'll be writing some articles, hopefully, in the Community Development Journal or any other journals. So let's.
I hope so. Let's cross the fingers. Yeah.
That's great. Before we leave you, Laurie, Kira, and I are quite interested to hear from the people who are here today a bit more about what you'd like to get out of these forums. So this one today, we've had a presenter and we've had questions and reflections, and that's been great. On other occasions in the past, we've also had presentations, including from PhD students, and we've also had a topic or a methodology, or just people sharing problems and issues in their research. One thing that I'd suggested, if we didn't get a speaker today, which we did, would be to do what's called a dilemmas cafe, where people bring in some of their research dilemmas and we work in small groups looking at the ethical dilemmas. We could take a particular methodology or method or a particular issue about community development research and how you do it, how you get it noticed, what are some of the problems and issues in the community development field for practitioner researchers. So there could be a whole load of topics and themes. Do any of you have any thoughts? And also, if anybody themselves would like to present your research, and it can just be work in progress. It doesn't have to be completed. You know, yours is the PhD in progress, or it could be suggesting us a topic. So any suggestions from the people here? Yes, Ferozi.
I think, yeah, I mean, I find your work also very relevant in terms of, you know, ethics and research. So I think I would be very, and also I'd be interested to present myself, which is my own research in terms of trust, understanding trust and research. So I would be, I would like to see in future presentations on how research as a process was used for process of colonization and continues to operate in the very Western European modality. And I would like to see a presentation that how we can build some kind of resistance to understand that what can be done to decolonize or take anti-colonial research measure. Like, I know something very relevant to Canada, that a lot of the research that happens in natural resource management, and we know it very well that, for example, UNDRIP, you know, it doesn't have any legal binding, so it just, you know, so I would like to see that how going to Indigenous communities, how we can start respecting their worldviews, their cosmovision, their priorities. Like, for example, not going to community, okay, you got to do business, business, business. Like you talked about solidarity, Margarita, and a lot of literature talks about that, how people were resilient in most difficult times. COVID was one of the best examples, but it was the community. So like responsible research, trust in the context of settler colonies, probably the best examples are Kansas countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And I'm also interested to present, talking to my supervisor, I'd like to present as well.
Excellent, thank you very much. I think that's a great idea. So around a theme of decolonizing research, but maybe you would like to do something linked to your own research on trust, and I guess show how your approach has attempted to kind of challenge the colonial approach to research. So I think that's a great offer. I'm sure that would be of interest to other people. Am I right in thinking that? Yeah. Any other suggestions for topics or presentations? Nirosha, got your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm Nirosha. I'm from Sri Lanka. I have just joined the International Association of Community Development, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to listen to presentations of this nature. Margarita, thank you so much for your presentation, and I'm really sad that I missed the first part. I will definitely go through the presentation, the recording. So I'm really unable to ask any questions at the moment, but I have been listening to the rest. And regarding your question, I would really love to hear presentations, see information on qualitative research, because when it comes to community development, sometimes qualitative research will show, from my personal experience, will show aspects which you never actually received from the quantitative ones. So, and the methodology used in the quantitative research could actually conflict with the situation, the context, and so many things. This is just from the little meager exposure that I have got. So I would love to see in the future any presentations or any discussions on qualitative research, please. Thank you so much.
Okay, excellent. Rosie, is your research qualitative?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that might be something we'll hear about if we choose to go there, but we could also have a special session on different approaches to qualitative research. Any other thoughts or suggestions? And Laurie's put a link in the chat. Well, she hasn't put a link, but a previous researchers forum featured Emmanuel from Ghana, who was passionate about indigenizing community development practice. So we could find that link on the YouTube. Okay, Ryan.
If we're building a bit of a wish list, Sarah, one of the topics I'd love to hear more about from different corners of the world is how community development practitioners are navigating political changes. Because we're in a sea of political change and ideological changes. And I think the anchors within community development are solid, but how we convey that and how we operate within these new political realms and ideologies has become increasingly challenging. It's incredibly frustrating at times as well, as there seems to be an increasing divide and kind of separation between the practice and some of our higher level nation state subnational policies. So things that kind of touch on that, I think, would be a really interesting perspective to hear from.
Okay, I've noted that, and particularly if people are doing research on that. Practitioners in the current political climate, the climate of change, constant crisis, etc. We'll put a call out for that as well. And I think Anna Clark, the president of IACD, was talking about sending out a survey to members to ask what topics, themes they would like for the forum and what function they would like the forum to perform, whether that's presentations or a forum for sharing ideas, etc. So what balance of presentations, questions, answers, as opposed to more open-ended discussions or little workshops in small breakout groups, and whether we open it up to everybody who wants to come in the community development field or whether it's just for people who are members. And so that's another question. We've got several people who aren't members, and obviously it's very beneficial for a wider group of people to join and maybe to consider becoming members. Is there anything more? Laurie, yeah.
Yeah, just something that I think would be really interesting is to look at some emerging areas of theory, whether it's indigenous scholarship or posthumanism, just happens to be a key one for me, but other areas of emerging theory and scholarship, and then how it could be relevant to community development, and recognizing that community development isn't always, depending on the country, isn't always a field of study. It's often a practice that's incorporated in other fields of study and practice, like social work and so on. And another area that I would find an interesting conversation is talking about community economic development versus community development. And I think I'd be interested in my companions in Canada, any thought on this. But in Canada, for instance, community economic development has been very strong. There is a national organization for it, the Canadian CED Network, which Ryan and I are both past presidents of, but there's no national community development network that I know of in Canada. So I think there's an interesting reflection and on this idea of community development and community economic development as a focus, and certainly policy has been funding for research policies, government policies, and so on, have in the past been very, very supportive of CED, but not necessarily CD. So I think that would be an interesting thing to explore. I don't know if it's relevant to other countries, but.
Yeah, Rosie.
Laurie, spot on. Spot on. Love it. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of interest from Canada on that topic. So that might be something that our Canadian colleagues can present to us about. So I've made a note of those possible topics. We're thinking that perhaps the next meeting would be in September, perhaps, Laurie, was we will have a little bit of a break.
Yeah, we don't usually do anything in the summer.
Yeah, or at least our summer. I don't think we've got any Australians with us at the moment, but sometimes we do. So we'll fix a meeting in September. Ferocia, since you were the first one to offer, and I think it's a very engaging topic, and it leads on from what we've been doing today, would you be willing to kick us off with a presentation and also a kind of series of discussion questions to get us going on both the trust and the Indigenous decolonizing approaches to research?
I would love it. I would love it.
Can you, well, I'm sure Laurie's got your email address, but if you could put your email address for me in the chat, then we can write to you and follow up. And we'll also follow up with Nirosha, if you'd like to put your email in the chat. And we've got the office from Ryan, Laurie, and anybody else who would like to send some ideas. You can send them directly to me or to Laurie or to Kira. We can put our emails. I'll just put my email in the chat there. If you think of something that you want to tell us about, we can add it to our list of possible items for the agenda. So I'd like to hand back to Laurie, I think, to tie up the presentation. At the end of the meeting, Kira, Laurie and I are just going to have a quick chat. So if the rest of you, once Laurie closes it, would like to leave, then the three of us will talk how to take this forward. So over to you, Laurie.
Yeah, I just want to really thank Margarita for her presentation. I'm really glad your supervisor was also able to join us to give a broader perspective of things, and just always great to see more Canadians engaged with the IACD. So thank you, Ryan, for the suggestion of Margarita as well, and arranging all of that and working with the two of you, working with Jessica to make this happen. So yeah, it's just very exciting to see other people getting involved in the Researchers Forum and the ideas that came forward today for other sessions that could be done. And I'll go as wide as saying potentially this could be a quarterly thing. You know, we've mentioned our goal is 2 per year, but that's just sort of the minimum. So I would certainly love to see this happening quarterly. Yeah, so thank you very much, everyone, for participating and attending. And I will be saving the chat and passing that on to Jessica as well. So when she's posting the video, maybe she can, some of the links that were shared to articles or other research and so on, some of those could be shared as well. And I also invite all of you to check out more about the IACD and on the website. It's getting a refresh and new branding. So I'm not sure when exactly that's happening, but I know it's supposed to be happening. But yeah, the more people we have involved, and as a board member for North America and the Caribbean, certainly I'm really excited to see more people from the region participating. But there are regional meetings that happen around the world in different regions that are represented within the IACD. So yeah, I'd encourage you to just find out more, and feel free to reach out if you want more information about the IACD as well.
And could I just add, I noticed some people have come in late, and that's probably because you couldn't make it earlier. But I was just wondering if some people seem to have had some difficulties getting in, or there may have been confusions over time zones. So if you have had any difficulties getting in, and I know you're the ones who are in, there may be others who couldn't get in, would you just let us know what the issues were, because we'll try and sort them out. So I just echo Laurie's great thanks to our speaker, Margarita, and to all of you for your participation, and we'll hope to see you in September. It's always hard to find a time and an appropriate day and date, and if we ask you if this time is okay, you'll probably say yes, because you're all here, and there are other people in other parts of the world for whom it's not. So we'll have a little chat about time zones and dates and times, and try and find something that we hope will fit as many people as possible. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day or night or whatever it is where you are. Thank you.